challenging news is we have to formally debate this now and decide whether or not you are an appropriate person to have the freedom of the borough. So if by chance anybody stands up to say that you're probably not appropriate and you'd like their contact details, you just need to see me at the end of the meeting. But we do, members, have to formally go through that. So I call upon the leader of the council to forwardly propose that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mickey Bushell, MBE, thank you for coming in here tonight, and all your family for making the effort. And I could never forget at the London Olympic when he was coming through. I thought for a minute he was going to fly when you crossed the sort of the line as a first. Mickey Bushell was born on 8th of June 1990 at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital, and his family lives in Alston. He attended Holmer Lake Primary School. It was during this period that his athletic abilities were spotted. At the age of 11, Mickey began wheelchair racing, and as they say, the rest is history. He was awarded MBE in 2013 for the service to athletics, and he won 100-meter T53, 100-meter gold medal, and then 100-meter Paralympic champion London in 2012 as well. I hope I got them all right here. Team GB member at the age of 15, World T53 100-meter record holder, Beijing Olympic T53 100-meter silver medalist, British record holder for a 100-meter, 200-meter, 400-meter, and 800 meters, and so on. Well done. We are all immensely proud of you, Mickey. Mickey's success in the face of adversity. The town of Telford and its citizen wishes to honor and celebrate your achievement today by granting the freedom of the borough to every special person. We salute you, Mickey, and we look forward to many more medals. So Telford expects. Thank you very much. Well done, and good luck for the future. And I move.
Thank you, Leader. It's going to be seconded by Councillor Angela McClements, who is the ward member for Alston. Councillor McClements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to second Mickey for this award. Many professional athletes entertain us with their strength and competitive spirit. Then there are those who inspire us with their ability to overcome adversity. And that is what Mickey has done. It's great to see his family here with him tonight. I know how proud Mickey's parents, Pete and Shelley, are of their son, and would like to pay tribute to them also for the unbelievable dedication and support they have given to Mickey over the years. We all became captured in the spirit of the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2012, but the moment I can remember most is the 3rd of September. I screamed the house down when Mickey won the gold. Mind you, I reckon that there was a lot of screaming going on in Telford Wrekin during that race, because he not only won that medal for Great Britain, he won it for the residents of Telford Wrekin. And of course, it's great to see a gold postbox in Alston, the ward I represent, the only one in Shropshire. So proud. Many of you may not know that it's just across the road from where Mickey and his family live, so that's a constant reminder of that great achievement. But for me, the best tribute and the most satisfying has to be from the young children of Shortwood Primary School. I went into Shortwood shortly after Mickey had won the gold medal. I cannot tell you how excited those children were and so proud. Mickey is their hero. And I am proud too. Mickey, you're truly inspirational. This is a special award tonight for a special person. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members who want to pay their own brief tribute to what Mickey has achieved? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Steve. I'll manage that microphone, thank you.
Can we just out of courtesy, can we use the microphone, Councillor? It's just because the proceedings are being recorded and filmed, and it just makes it easy for those watching at home in their
absolutely. Is that
hundreds.
better?
That's much better, thank you.
Right, well, I'd certainly like to add my congratulations to Mickey as well. Looking at the agenda, it questions whether you're a person of distinction, and I think you qualify for that rather well, and also whether you've rendered service to Telford and Wrekin. And as has already been said, many people got very excited about what you achieved. And looking back, and I remember watching the Beijing Games, the Paralympics, where you got a silver medal, which was a tremendous achievement. You then went on, of course, to top that with a gold medal at the London Olympics and MBE as well, which is rare praise indeed. You are, of course, I understand, the world record holder for the 100-meter sprint as well. You can do it a good deal faster than I certainly could. But I think your crowning achievement, if I can say, has to be having a paint box painted gold after you. I think that's tremendous. How many people can actually have that sort of claim to fame? And I think it bears testament to what you've done and what you've achieved, and what you've achieved in your life, which is far more than many, or even most people actually do. And I would like to say that we're all proud of what you've done. We've all got very excited of what you've done, and I'd certainly like to add my congratulations to you to become a freeman of the borough, and I think it's very, very richly deserved. Well done indeed.
Any other members want to make a tribute? Councillor Shirley Reynolds, followed by Councillor Arnold England. Just wait for your microphone, if you could. Thank you.
Thank you. This is just a quick one, really. I feel extremely lucky to have known Mickey, and I can actually add congratulations from another part of the community. I am very lucky in that I'm a lecturer at this college, and I remember the excitement, firstly when you got your silver, but then when you got the gold. I cannot tell you the excitement of the whole of this college and all our students. And then when you came back to show us your medal, and you know, if you go over to our sports dome and whatever, we've got lovely big pictures of Mickey around this college. The whole college is ours, and we are incredibly proud of him. And I'm just so delighted that you could only, you know, share your education with us, but you also came back to inspire our students as to what can be done if you only put your mind to it. You're an absolute star for all our youngsters. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor England.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wearing my former leisure and sports development hat from many years ago, I'm fully aware of the support that is required for someone like Mickey to pursue the activities, but it takes a whole organisation. You could say behind every great athlete is a massive organisation of support, and as has already been said, family. But it's how he inspires other people, particularly young people, right, to overcome any adversity, because if Mickey can do it, you can do it, they can do it, and that's really why I thank him for his efforts, and I do hope he'll continue to succeed. But it's that inspirational value that he gives to others that I am very grateful for. So thank you, Mickey.
Thank you. Okay, unless somebody else wants to speak, we will move to, sorry, Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Fletcher, I do apologise. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'd just like to add my congratulations on all your efforts that you've achieved. You are an inspiration. Young people need mentors. They need somebody to look up to, and you are their inspiration, as everybody has said. I would like to thank you from all our hearts for everything that you've done and everything that you're going to do in the future, and wish you well, and hope you enjoy being the freeman of the city, which allows you to take your sheep across the land. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, members, just so you're clear what we're about to do, we need to pass a resolution to admit an honorary freeman, providing that no less than 2/3 of members voting thereon at the meeting of the council specifically convened for this purpose vote in support. And what you're voting for is that Mickey Bushell, MBE, is a person of distinction and a person who is considered to have rendered eminent service to Telford and Wrekin. All those in support of the resolution? Is unanimous. Thank you very much. I don't know how you feel about standing ovations, and we perhaps overdo it, particularly in the conference season. But if anybody deserves a standing ovation, it is Mickey Bushell, MBE. So please join me. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Now, call upon Deputy Mayor, who will make the presentation to Mickey. Mickey, there's no compulsion on you to say anything, but if you want to, we can get a microphone to you. And if you do, my advice is keep it as short as possible. And if you don't, nobody would blame you, I have to say to you. So would you like to say a few words, or is it time to move on? It's okay. All right. Well, look, thank you very, very much. Thank you to you and your family. You are a credit to them, and you are a credit to this town. But thank you very, very much for coming along. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a time we start the meeting. Thank you very much.
But I think just before we do, we'll allow Mickey and his family to depart. Thank you. Right, members and members of the public, that's the ceremony over. We move now into the formal part of the proceedings. But before we do that, just to reiterate, this week we learnt of the untimely death of Councillor Dave Davis, known to all elected members, previous speaker to myself, some years ago, previous leader of this council as well. And I would invite those who feel able to stand to join me and stand for a minute's silence in his memory. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is a very busy evening. It's a very busy agenda. However, I do think it is appropriate that, as well as marking a 1-minute silence, we invite members to pay their own tributes in memory of Dave, and I know that many people will want to. We've got to get the balance right between extending enough time for people to do that, but also getting on with the business. But I know that some, I say, many will want to, and invite the leader of the council, Councillor Kulthip Sahota, to say his own private tribute to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Dave was diagnosed with myeloma back in December 2011. Dave, being a Dave, is carried on with his council duties during his treatment, holding his regular ward surgeries and representing the views of his constituents. About 5-6 weeks ago, I saw him standing at the bus station about 8 o'clock in the evening. And I pulled over and I asked him, I said, "Where, Dave? Where you been?" And he said, there was a plans board meeting at the White House and someone from his ward had asked him to represent him there. And that was a typical of Dave. I knew Dave through Labour Party, and he was also a friend of my family. 5 years ago, he came with my family to India. We visited Bombay, Golden Temple, and the Taj Mahal. He was a very loyal friend. We attended the Labour Party conferences together. We went to town after town on the Labour Party business. We knocked door in wards and streets we have never heard of. For Dave, the Labour Party was his second family. He lived for Labour values and ideals. He was a true socialist, always fighting the causes and the corners of the underdog and that of the minority. If I was to sum up in just one sentence, Dave, I would say he was a very decent human being, and I miss him a lot.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Eade. Give a microphone, please.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to say how shocked I was as well to learn of Dave's death. My relationship with Dave was, of course, somewhat different to that of Kulthip's. I've known Dave for many, many years. I've always found him to be quite humorous. I thought as Speaker he was extremely good. He had that sort of temperament, really, to laugh at proceedings when they got a bit serious or heated, and even laugh at himself in many ways. My overriding memories are quite funny, really, in that the first one was a dinner at the LGA with David Hutchison when David was alive. And we spent an evening together before and after that. And it was a great time, and it's something that's stuck in my mind. The other occasion was watching Telford United play, and funnily enough, it was at Shrewsbury. We ended up sitting together in the stand. And that was also pretty enjoyable, both on and off the pitch. Dave was that sort of guy, really. And having seen him probably 5 or 6 weeks ago, it was typical of Dave, asking how he was, and he almost shrugged it off and just carried on, said he was fine, and he would carry on as normal, really. And he was dealing with what were, well, obviously very, very serious medical problems, but it was just typical of the guy. I mean, cancer is a particularly cruel illness, not only to people that suffer with it, but also carers and family as well. And to watch and live with that sort of illness is very difficult all round. And I include, of course, family, friends in that as well. I have to say, and I do mean this, and it's not an occasion where you stand and say this sort of thing. I'll miss Dave Davis. I like Dave Davis. I enjoyed his company on a number of occasions, as I've said. And the way he approached his politics and his beliefs, were very compatible with getting on with people on the council, no matter what their persuasions were. And I think that's very much to his credit. And I, for one, am genuinely sad that he's passed on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Bill Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My memories of Dave is particularly when he became the group leader for the Labour group, in that he was a breath of fresh air. He was courteous, he was fair, he could have a laugh. Also in audit committees, he could chair it, and he was always fair. And my wife and I also bumped into him once when he was trying to recover from his illness. We were just having a bite to eat and having an answer. Sorry for himself. He never made a big thing about it. He just wanted to get on. So that'll be a lasting memory of him. Someone who was fair, a decent person, who just wanted to get on with his life.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Watling and then Councillor Rob Sloan.
I've known Dave Davis for nearly 25 years, and I consider him not only to be one of my closest friends, but also a friend to my family. We spent many happy hours together ruminating on how we could A, ensure a fairer society, B, find the best walks with pubs at the end, of course, and C, plot the rise of AFC Telford to the Premiership. I don't know a fairer and more democratic person than Dave. His belief in public service and his socialist values were plain to everyone who knew him. He was understated in his ambitions, which means he was possibly the most appropriate person to take over the leadership of the council when he did. I remember debating the benefits of unitary status with Dave before this council became a unitary authority, and we both agreed that the benefits of the change for ordinary citizens in Telford far outweighed any risks, a conclusion that I'm pleased he was able to see realised. And I want to finish by saying there's no truth in the rumour that the front bench on this side of the chamber wanted Dave to be Speaker only because they were more comfortable with him in front of them than they were with him behind them. Dave was a dedicated member of this council who represented all those in his ward without fear or favour. He's someone I will miss greatly for his wise counsel, his humour and his taste in good ale.
Thank you. Councillor Rob Sloan, followed by Councillor Angela Clements and Councillor Eric Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. David and I first became acquainted when he came down from Yorkshire, and he was an active member of IRSF. I was chair of the Council of Civil Service Unions locally, so it was my job to coordinate actions, which was herding cats or plaiting fog, and I'm afraid David's arrival on the scene really didn't help that at all. He had this wonderful saying, yes, that's right, but, and then totally disagreeing with everything that had gone before him. He left his employment with the Inland Revenue when EDS and Ross Perot took over, and he failed their acid test on two points. He was an active trade unionist and he'd got a beard, and they didn't approve of either, so they decided to part company with each other. So our paths and our friendship with James and Lucy and Pauline and some drunken nights in pubs and at his house continued, and our political paths intertwined. And then I'm back on the council, I'm chairing the Labour group, and I've still got Dave Davis at the end of the table saying, yes, that's right, but consensus dissipates instantly. He's my comrade and I will miss him dearly.
Thank you. Members, I said to you, we've got to get the balance of this right. I've got 5 other people who want to speak. I think we're probably going to have to draw it to a close after that. Those of you who do know Dave, he'll be watching these proceedings and you can just imagine what he'll be saying, which is get on with it, I think. Councillor Angela McClements, Eric Carter, Richard Overton, Councillor Green, and finally we'll finish with Councillor Shirley Reynolds, and then we're going to have to draw it to a close. I'm sorry. Angela.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been proud to know Dave since the late 1980s when he became a councillor for Madeley, and he was my friend. He was a man of deep socialist principles and obvious humanity. Dave stood firm to his beliefs and loved and thrived on political debate, which he articulated so well. And as Rob said, you know, Rob's chair of the group, Labour group, I'm secretary. He just loved a good political argument. If I saw him tapping his feet around the table at a Labour group, I knew he was going to challenge the status quo. And of course he did, so eloquently. I shall miss that. We all will miss that. He was passionate about his constituents and was very proud to represent Iron Bridge. He was a man of deep conviction and passionate about social justice and public service. Telford and Wrekin has lost a very committed and popular public servant, but most of all, a great champion of the underdog. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Eric Carter. Can we get a microphone to Councillor Carter? Thank you.
Yes, as a Lancastrian, Dave and I did have one or two little chats, obviously, because he came from the wrong side of the M62, although he would always say that was my problem. Dave and I joined the council, the district council as it was then, in 1991 at the same time. And I did serve on a number of different committees with Dave. And I can honestly say, even though we were completely at opposite ends of the political spectrum, I can't remember ever having a cross word with Dave. Okay, we fell out across the council chamber, but it was done in a friendly manner. That was Dave's way, it was his style. He was a fair, very fair-minded man who you could have a discussion with. I'm not so sure what he was like with his Labour colleagues, as has already been said in meetings. I didn't obviously attend those, but I can certainly say when I met him either socially or within the council, I always find him a very fair man and somebody you could have a discussion with without it getting too involved. I will miss him, and I have to say I did chat to him after the AGM when we were at the place, and one wouldn't have known at that stage anything was wrong with the guy. I chatted to him, asked him how he was. Eric, I'm fine. Obviously he wasn't, but he didn't want anybody else to know that. A very brave man, and I can only say if ever I get any affliction like Dave has had to put up with over these last 3 years, I hope I can deal with it with the dignity that he did. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Overton.
I've known Dave since I joined the Labour Party 22 years ago. But it's only in the last 3.5, 4 years that I got to know him even better when we worked together in David Wright's office. He's become a firm friend as well as a comrade, and he was always the conscience of the Labour Party locally because of being a socialist like myself. And it was great to talk in the office and bounce ideas off and principles and where we're going as a party. And you know, at times like this, when you have somebody you can do that with, I'm going to miss him greatly. He was a good man, and everybody said that tonight. He was kind, generous, and he has principles, which we all know. He also had a great sense of humour, and the office was made even funnier with him being employed by Dave. And I'm going to really miss him. But one of the legacies he did do while he was leader of the council was to bring the beacon back on the Wrekin. And it's flashing red. Well, it's on red all the time now, and that is my little bit now, that I can look up at that beacon and know Dave is in my mind and my memories. He's going to leave a big gap in the local Labour Party, and he's going to leave a big gap in some of our hearts.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Green.
Don't need them for reading. Councillor Dave Davies represented Madeley for many years before I joined him in 2003. Dave certainly gave Madeley a very active representation, setting the bar high for a newly elected councillor to follow. He could be often seen delivering leaflets from a large shoulder bag he carried for the purpose. Long drives, steps and tricky letterboxes, sometimes with canine residents the other side, would not deter Dave. Dave had a proper diary printout long before the rest of us heard of such things, and would have all his appointments neatly scheduled and would turn up diligently for every meeting with the correct paperwork. In those early days, we would sometimes anticipate a rocky ride from residents in Madeley, particularly over the difficult and complex negotiations regarding the second Madeley Centre development. If this was not an easy call, but Dave would always be there in one of his trademark check jackets, fielding questions from residents who would ask just when the centre would be sorted out. The secondary development was imminent, Dave would say, and always with a good grace. He provided information to residents promptly and efficiently, which is why I guess he regularly topped the poll. I learnt a lot from him in those early days, lessons that will stay with me. Dave made a dedicated contribution to Madeley residents at a time of great change in his role as ward member and chairman of the then Madeley Parish Council.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Shirley Reynolds, please.
Thank you. I've known Dave for many years, both as a councillor now, but previously when I was an employee at Telford Wrekin Council for many years. He was always treated others as he wished to be treated himself. He was always very respectful, caring and compassionate. I feel very privileged to have known Dave. He was a gentleman with a great sense of humour. He was passionate about his politics and his community. His loss will be felt by all. We have lost a hard-working councillor and, more importantly, a personal friend. God bless Dave.
Members, thank you very much, and I do apologise for those who wanted to speak and we didn't get the time. But I think it was right that we marked it in that way. But we need to move on. Before we get on to the formal business, we should also note the resignation of Councillor Adam Stanton, who I don't think is here this evening, but I think on your behalf pass on our collective thanks for the work that he has done over a period of time, both as a ward member, an elected borough councillor, and I think as a Newport Town councillor, and wish him well for the future. If you've got your papers in front of you, we move to the minutes of the previous meeting, and I just ask that they are confirmed, and if they could be moved, seconded and voted upon. Anybody move the minutes of the previous meeting? Councillor Sloan, second by Councillor Overton. All those in favour? Thank you. We just need the Deputy Mayor to sign the minutes. Okay. They'll be signed in a minute. Apologies for absence. I call upon the Democratic Service Managers just to read out the apologies we've received so far.
Councillor Ray Evans, Councillor Malcolm Smith, Jane Greenaway, Jackie Seymour, Jackie Loveridge, Ian Fletcher and Bill McClements, unless there's any further apologies from the floor. Clive Mason. Thank you.
Just to do with apologies, Councillor Soden.
I think Bill's missing his first meeting ever, and the reason he sends his apologies and he's not here because he's in London with Dave Sidaway, having a meeting with the MOD minister and trying to bring jobs to the MOD and so on and so forth. And that is the reason. He's on official council business. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Received any declarations of interest?
Councillor Derek White, Councillor Veronica Fletcher and Councillor John Minor, as members of the Joint Health Scrutiny Committee, will take no part in the debate and will not vote. They will stay in the room during that process. Those are the only declarations we'll receive.
Right, thank you for that. We move on to item 4, Leaders' Report and Announcements, and I invite Councillor Sahota to speak on any matters of significance for the borough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been a busy summer. Southwater is well and truly open for business. It's already attracting many thousands of visitors who enjoy the new facilities throughout the summer. On October the 18th, we host the official opening of the Southwater, when we expect all units let in the first phase to be opened. I know the planning for this event is well underway, the opening of it, and there will be surprise for everyone. Southwater is a key player in boosting our local economy. In the last 2 years, Telford economy grew by 8.3%, almost double the national rate. In the recent months, we are seeing around 800 new jobs being created in this borough, although through expansion and a new investment in the borough as well. Earlier in the summer, we announced a scheme that will deliver super-fast broadband to 96% of the premises in Telford and Wrekin. This is a key for driving enterprise and growth, and will enable business and local people greater opportunity to access fastest available broadband possible and to reduce operational cost. The news that Treasury is finally seeking to go ahead with a link road between M54 and M6 toll is a further excellent news for the borough and its economy. Our Job Junction initiative is continuing to help local people into employment and showing some real results with a level of youth unemployment, while it's still unacceptably high, but we are working on that one as well. This weekend we'll see the first mini job fair in the town centre. That's tomorrow and Saturday. The job box team will be on hand for advice and assistance in applying for seasonal vacancies in the borough. Since we were last here at the TCAT, the college has opened its new Engineering and Technology Centre. That was a couple of weeks ago. This flagship centre will ensure that the future workforce here in Telford and Wrekin have a high level of practical engineering skill that they all need for the jobs. Meanwhile, our local university, Harper Adams, has been shortlisted for the University of University of the Year, and good luck to them as well. Pride in your community team have been out and about this summer in the borough, improving roads and open spaces and other areas that matter so much to our residents. Application for £1 million Community Pride Fund closed last week, which has been enthusiastically received by all our communities. Together, we will be discussing our housing investment program just a little later on, which will help tackle the significant demand across the borough for rented accommodation. These new homes will be then be rented out to a private tenant and at a market rate to generate incomes for our council. There's a lot more going on, Mr. Speaker. I better leave at that, and thank you very much.
Right, thank you. We move to item 5, Mayor's announcements. Councillor Smith, our Mayor, is not here, unfortunately, but we do have our Deputy Mayor, and I think, Deputy Mayor, you're going to talk us through some of your engagements, right?
Thank you, Chair, Speaker. Out of all the engagements are listed on the Appendix B. Out of about 30 engagements, I done about 6. And the one I did was at Sanctuary Housing Healthy Happy Week, and I was very impressed with those people, how they handle with the people, and how they look after them. I did join the Mayor of Newport on a parade through the streets from their council offices to this church, and that was pretty good. I was actually felt very proud of doing that. The one that actually stands out, the Health Expo Day at White House, Wellington. We went there with the leader of the house and the leader of the council, and we had a full MOT done our own health. And there were a lot of people there, and they had good advice on how to look after your health and stay healthy and live long. These are the few ones I done. I also attended Shrewsbury Town Council's summer lunch at the Members' Market, the Quarry, Shrewsbury. That was very enjoyable. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. We move to item 6, public questions. Can I just clarify something? Is Mr. Felton, has Mr. Felton arrived? Right, okay. Just wanted to identify, Mr. Felton. We'll get a microphone to you later so you can read your question out. That's the process we operate. Is that okay? But the first question we have is a question to the Leader of the Council. It's from Mr. Kershaw, who can't be here. So I'm going to read out his question on your behalf. On his behalf, it says, what are the advantages and disadvantages to the people of the borough if the council achieves city status for the borough? And that is to the Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was hoping to see Guy here tonight, but of course he can't make it. And I'd like to thank him for his question on the advantages and the disadvantages of achieving a city status. Well, my answer is, Mr. Speaker, that we are not applying for a city status. We are quite happy as the way we are, and we have no intention of becoming a city. And I don't know where the city status came from. We are creating jobs. Private investment is coming in, and our local economy is on the move. And our local economy, like I said a couple of minutes ago, grew by 8.3% in the last 2 years. There's a good chance, if Bill is successful tonight, we might even become a MOD strategic hub. So no intention of becoming a city status, and I like to move on, and I thank Guy for his question.
Thank you. We've got a microphone to Mr. Felton. Question 2. This question is for Councillor Charles Smith, and it's from Mr. Felton. Mr. Felton, you just read out your question in full, if that's okay.
Thank you. My question to the council is, why do the council allow agricultural land to be sold off for housing when people are advertising for land to grow crops on?
Thank you very much. Just a note for the future. It is quite important that the question that is read is the question that is put in writing, and variance of it just causes a little bit of confusion. But the sentiments of your question is there, isn't it? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good evening, Ron. Well, the first point to make is that the council has no role in private land sales, and we cannot intervene in private land sales. And with regard to the use of farmland for other purposes that may require planning permission, the council recognises that a national planning policy framework requires councils to take into account the economic and other benefits of the best and most versatile agricultural land, guiding development to areas of poorer quality land. But councils are also directed to promote the diversification of agricultural land. The MPPF also requires councils to meet their local housing needs and to significantly boost housing supply. There is a clear need for new housing and growth, not just locally but nationally. A recent report by the University of Cambridge identifies long-term pressures on farmland from the growing population and the use of land for energy crops. But the report concludes that it is the government's fault for a lack of coherent vision on how to make the most of UK farmland. Another factor is the EU Common Agricultural Policy, which requires farmers to put more land aside to protect nature. However, increased yields and improvements in farming will help to compensate for this. Mr. Speaker, that's the answer.
Thank you. Members, we move to item 7, Cabinet decisions made since the last meeting of the full Council. And I invite the Leader to invite Cabinet members to comment on those matters as covered in the report, which is Appendix C, which is your white papers, pages 15 to 20.
Well, if there is any question, otherwise we'll move on.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Fletcher, followed by Councillor Carter. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I refer to page 19 regarding the dedication of bridleways and footpaths on council-owned land. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to our environmental team who've worked extremely hard this year in all that they've done, because my caseload this year has been very high and they have been amazingly active in satisfying the questions and the problems that have arisen. I also would like to welcome this report. However, having seen and heard all the problems that have been rising this year regarding the cutbacks of the hedges, the maintenance of footpaths, etc., and also some of them are partly owned by private people, I would like to ask, what is the contingency plan for the monetary availability for maintenance of these bridleways and the footpath? Because I know there is a constraint on financial implications on all of this, and the budget has been decreased year on for the last 3 years. So
Okay.
what is there
I
going
think
to be in the pot?
we've got the essence of your question.
you.
So, who is going to respond? Councillor Clare. Could you just wait for the microphone, if that's all right? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Fletcher's quite right. This is a long overdue action to some people. It makes it quite clear on our land what is a bridleway and what is not. And she's quite right about the money. But at the end of the day, choices are difficult. They will, as far as possible, always be made safe. We have got a budget, and where things are brought to our attention, if it's reasonable to do them, if it's an unreasonable request, then obviously it could be difficult. If, in fact, she wants to bring to my attention any specifics, or any other councillor, I'd be happy to look into them. But this is long overdue and is very welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm referring to page 17 and the item on broadband. I would have expected that you would have probably expected me to stand on this one. I was very, very pleased to hear the leader in his speech earlier welcoming the fact that we are now looking, at long last I might say, to see that Telford and Wrekin are joining together with the rest of Shropshire in trying to ensure that the rural areas are not overlooked. This is something that I've been campaigning for some time, and in fact I spoke at a meeting regarding the LEP's work, which took place some time ago, and I asked the question then of Councillor McClements what was happening, and at that particular stage he said, well, we're still trying to find the funding to do it. The government did come along with some additional funding, but I am very, very pleased that at long last, as I say, the Cabinet and officers who were involved in this have seen the need to ensure that our rural area, where, let's be honest, a lot of the jobs are created in the rural area, small businesses, particularly in the gorge, who are working in the area of bed and breakfast accommodation, tourism, really need to have high-speed broadband. That goes across all the rural areas, but not least in this location of T&W. So I do welcome the fact that we are going ahead with it at long last, and I'm still waiting for the thank you letter in the post. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm taking that, Councillor Carter, was a comment rather than a question that you want an answer to. No, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Speaker. At the last Cabinet meeting, Councillor Davis made a statement that the lease given tenure to AFC Telford United by this council was indeed faulty, and I quote, not worth the paper it was written on. I asked at that meeting to be advised of what problems, issues or deficiencies that existed with that particular lease, and also who was responsible for it. For a local authority to make what seems to be implied by Mr. Davis's comments such a wholesale mess of a vital lease, and for that lease to be accepted as satisfactory by the football club, is potentially a major failing. I'm sorry, but not surprised to say that despite asking for this information at Cabinet, nothing has yet been supplied. However, I have no intention of letting this issue go, and now ask at full council for a full explanation from the council about the lease and what the deficiencies were and who indeed was responsible for it. And if the lease, as he says, was so bad, what action has he taken in relation to those that produce such a seemingly faulty document?
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Reid, for that question. I agree with you that it is an important lease. It's a shame that it was ineffective, and it was impossible for the football club to register that lease at the land registry. I'm not into blaming public servants, Mr. Speaker, and I won't name and shame public servants, because at the end of the day, we have a convention at this council and in our political system in this country that the politicians are the ones who are accountable at the end of the day. Councillor Reid and Councillor Burrell, amongst others, stood on the football pitch at AFC Telford United to declare that the lease was in place. It is not my fault, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't on the council at the time. That Councillor Reid did not bother to check the detail of that lease to see what was such a glaring, obvious mistake. I can confirm, though, Mr. Speaker, that in the last 2 days, New College Telford and Telford Wrekin Council and the football club have come to a wholesale agreement on terms of the lease, and we are planning an official unveiling of the new lease, which is effective, it is registerable, on the 30th of September.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions with relation to decisions made at the last meeting of the council? No. Let's move to item 8, recommendations from Cabinet. That's the July 24th meeting. Members, with your agreement, what I'd like to do to try and speed up the process is take Appendix D1 and D2 together and invite, I think it's Councillor Davis who's going to propose these, and I think you're happy to take questions on both areas later on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Councillor Davis, thank you.
As already been said, I've been asked to deal with these points in the absence of Councillor Bill McClements, who's absent from this meeting today, as he is in London banging the drum for investment at MOD Donington, which will safeguard and create thousands of jobs for our borough while bringing millions of pounds of investment to our town. And I'm sure everybody in this chamber wishes Bill the very best of luck in that meeting with the Minister. In regards to the property investment programme, Mr. Speaker, I am proud that as part of our strategy to reduce our dependency on government grant, we are setting out a programme of this council building homes for our residents. This programme will create 425 new homes for rent, along with over 4,500 square metres of commercial and retail space built on council land. This strategy will also protect for generations to come Southwater, ensuring the council remains in control of the quality of accommodation in the heart of our town and next to our town park. It also brings a number of sites which have laid dormant for many years as a result of the global slowdown. Mr. Speaker, the programme will raise the bar in our borough of what is acceptable in the rental market, and this council will be a landlord that our residents can trust and can rely on. We will also be rolling a landlord accreditation scheme to further improve the sector. This programme will create local jobs, traineeships and apprenticeships. Working across the council, we will endeavour to equip local residents so they have a good chance of getting a job as a result of this investment. We all know as members of the council this council is asset poor. By year 5, the asset value of this programme will be £68 million, rising to over £100 million by the end of the term. In the early years of the scheme, the net revenue will be over £1.5 million each and every year, rising to over £2.5 million towards the end of the scheme. Mr. Speaker, providing much needed money for our frontline services. In year 1, the surplus provided will allow this council to fund over 125,000 care hours for our vulnerable adults. Mr. Speaker, this is a boost for the quality of housing in our borough, a boost for jobs, a boost for residents in the private sector, private rental sector, a boost for the regeneration of our towns, a boost for council income, and a boost for Telford and Wrekin. Moving on to the financial monitoring, I seek permission from the council that the new allocations and slippages detailed in the report, along with the funding changes to the capital programme, be approved. Mr. Speaker, I don't intend to speak long on this particular item, but I would like to highlight 3 areas for members. The report allows us to put the final touches to the solar farm project, another example of this council reducing its dependency on government grant, creating green energy and reducing our carbon footprint. it is to be highlighted that this project will produce a surplus of over £4 million over the lifetime of the project, a surplus after all costs have been deducted that will help support vital services like adult social care. £160,000 per year for every single year for 25 years. This equates to over 13,000 hours of home care for our older people. The report also outlines over £700,000 of Section 106 contributions from the private sector for the improvements of Meadows Primary School in Ketley, a sure sign that when new homes are built for families and residents of this borough, that investment into our primary schools follows from the private sector. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight the exciting further improvements to Telford Ice Rink, a joint venture with Telford Tigers, which will see the council earning over £100,000 over the life of the project, while at the same time further increasing footfall to the ice rink itself and, of course, the South Water. Mr. Speaker, this council decided to invest in the biggest youth club in the borough rather than attempt a bodged privatisation, while the other side of this chamber wanted to waste tens of millions of pounds on a new council office.
Councillor Davis, could you have a seconder? And just be clear that whoever's going to second it is seconding both recommendations. Sorry, have you finished? Yes,
Yeah.
finished. Councillor Overton. Okay, so we've had recommendations on D1, D2, pages 2 to 46 for D1, 47 to 50. Anybody else like to speak on it? Councillor.
Can I have a question on private? As a small private landlord, what's my position on voting on this?
I don't think there is a conflict. No, I don't believe there is a conflict of interest. Do you want to speak on this issue as well?
Oh, yeah, probably comments you want to make, yeah.
Okay, all right. You want to speak on it now, Councillor Bentley?
No, I think I'll wait.
Okay, thank you.
No worry.
Well, the recommendations have been proposed and seconded. So, unless anybody else wants to speak, Councillor Tomlinson? Councillor Jugden?
Overall, I welcome the development. It's innovative. It generates revenue for the borough, or cuts down on our costs. It uses up a lot of brownfield sites, which other developers may choose not to want to develop. It also provides a number of affordable houses, in that some of them are relatively small sizes, so people will be able to afford them more. I would hope and I would expect that us as landlords would be one of the best, if not best landlords out there in the way we treat our tenants. The only drawback I've got to this, which was made abundantly clear at the Cabinet meeting, as it should have been, was that these won't be social houses. In other words, these aren't the traditional council houses that we used to build in the old days. They'll be of the good quality, don't get me wrong, but they won't be at social rents. We're no longer a registered social landlord. We didn't want to go down that route. And to me, it seems sad, not what the council's doing, but that we're borrowing £52 million to develop houses, which there are already houses being developed. We're doing this because we are strapped for cash, and it's not our fault we're strapped for cash. But for those people that will move into those houses, there's always an expectation out there, which I know we're going to make clear is not going to be the case. These will be purely commercially rented properties. But it just seems sad to me that we're having to borrow up to £50 million, and we're not adding to that social housing stock that is so desperately needed out there for our tenants who haven't got the money and can't afford normal commercially rented houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dugmore, do you indicate you wish to speak? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just got three questions. With regards to the apartments at Southwater, can we have confirmation that they will be for private rent? Because it's not clear in the report. And on page 24, where it says on the top of the table, 115 apartments with associated car parking, could we have confirmation as to where that car parking is actually going to be? And then my final question is over the page, on page 27, the table for council tax income. It looks like it's the same income for the next 30 years, and I just wondered whether or not there's a policy of not raising council tax over the next 30 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're going to take some other observations and comments, and then Councillor Davis can respond. I've got Councillor Mackenzie, followed by Councillor Eade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think perhaps the point's being missed as well here. Not only will the council be a quality landlord, the housing will have a quality mark. We've had problems with private landlords and the quality of housing, private rented housing. Not all, but with an awful lot. We can do enforcement, we can take people to court, it all costs money, but at the end of the day, if we lead the way as a quality landlord with partners, estate agents and other quality landlords, it will actually hopefully at the end of the day help people make a choice. And if you're paying the same type of rent, you might as well pay it to a quality landlord as a landlord who perhaps isn't quite hitting the bar. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we introduce, invite Councillor Reid to comment, just to make clear that Councillor Davis moved both D1 and D2. And if anybody wants to make a comment or an observation about D2, they can, of course. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Speaker. I've got quite a number of concerns about this project itself, about building 25 new homes, and indeed giving away or putting into the mix nearly £7 million worth of capital assets. Now, setting up a wholly owned company and then trying to staff it with council officers, I think is going to cause problems with workloading senior officers. How on earth can we expect them to cope with also running a trading company as well as the council itself? Now, quite clearly, the pressures on senior officers are going to be extreme, and something there is going to give. Credibility of this scheme is suspect and poor. As the Labour group announced this was going ahead 3 times last year, and that was before the feasibility study looking into the viability, whether it's possible to do it, to take place. There was a sense of predetermination about this. The announcements were going to be made, we're going to do this anyway, whether it stacks up or not. The amount of pressure this puts on council borrowing is, of course, extreme as well. And if we take into the MOD borrowing, then we're looking at council debt approaching £300 million, which is far in excess of anything that we've ever seen before. The comment's been made about the council being asset poor, and of course that's right. Telford Wrekin Council had houses, they had council houses. A Labour administration sold them for 100 million or so. Then they spent all of the money, and now they want to borrow another 52 million pounds to buy some more. Now, let alone about losing, as I say, the 7 million pounds worth of capital receipts. The private sector could do this. It's a core business for a number of large concerns and could be done at no risk to the council whatsoever. The sale and leaseback method, so easily dismissed by the Labour group, would allow the council to use net rental income plus any surpluses to pay the lease. Also, the council would receive ownership of the houses at the end of the lease term without any of the financial risk. A huge capital receipt worth millions to the residents of the borough. Occupancy rates, repair, maintenance are all variables that could derail this proposal, as could changes to the rented sector demand, which would leave us with potentially a financial disaster and a mess for somebody else to clean up. This is at best a risky venture with public money that will also see the council saddled with unparalleled levels of debt, the biggest in its history. And I find myself in some difficulty. In fact, I cannot support this proposition in its current form in any way at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Speaker. When this was presented to the Shadow Cabinet, this report, we were told there was an element of social housing in there. It now appears to have changed to predominantly private housing. So, could somebody explain to me where the right to buy fits in with private housing rental? Because I don't believe it can fit in. Well, it's not. No. There's a difference.
I'll answer the question at the end.
Yeah, there is a difference. There's 2 types of rent: there's secured and assured. Which is this?
Yeah, I'll
Can I just ask you?
Well,
no. I accept that. If we could just, if you just address your comments to me, and then we'll get normal debate.
I would like to know why the model was changed.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Just before I invite Councillor Davis to respond, Councillor Overton, you seconded the motion. Do you wish to comment and make an observation? Right, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for members who've asked questions. In regards to Councillor Bentley's question, I can confirm that there's a slight difference between market rent and social housing, which you may have confused yourself with, and I apologise if that's the case. The right to buy categorically does not apply to these houses. Full stop. Does not apply to these houses, apartments, categorically.
Well, just let him get through his answer. If you're dissatisfied, you can always raise it at another forum.
I can confirm that.
Thank you.
In terms of Councillor Dugmore's question, I can confirm that all 115 apartments in Southwater will be at market rent. In terms of the car parking, those will be in the town centre footprint, and further details of that will be reported to Council in due course. In regards to the council tax, you're completely right, Councillor Dugmore. We have not assumed a council tax increase in our model. Therefore, if we're in an unfortunate position where we have a Tory council that nearly increased the council tax by 7 or 8%, this model will be better off for it. In terms of Councillor Mackenzie's point, I can confirm that we are, at the same time as doing this venture, introducing a quality accreditation scheme for private landlords. Members of the council will have greater and lesser involvements in private landlords. Myself, in my ward, have numerous issues with private landlords. At the same time, there are good landlords, of course. There are also some very bad landlords, and the accreditation scheme will give our residents a very clear choice about who they want to rent a property from. I also agree that the council will be an excellent landlord that people can trust. In terms of Councillor Eade's question, I know that he likes to talk about the past rather than the future, and that may be testament to his political career and where it's ended up to. But the Wrekin Housing Trust issue was a completely different issue to this. And we are in a situation, Mr. Speaker, as a council, that when we compare our debt borrowing and compared to Shropshire, for example, we compete very, very well. This is good borrowing. This is borrowing to invest and to receive an income. And if the Conservative group are against this project, then they have to account in our alternative budget where they're going to make further £1.5 million worth of cuts. Because the reality is, if you don't do something like this, it is assumed in our income target, they will have to make £1.5 million more cuts. In terms of the capital, the assets, this is, everybody knows, Mr. Speaker, if you buy a house and you rent it out, you're going to stand to make a decent amount of money. You know, it's simple economics. This council is doing this for the right reasons, is to protect our housing. And I'd like to request a recorded vote on both items.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we'll have a recorded vote on that. Members, just so we're clear about what we're doing, we are, we've had recommendations D1 and D2 put together, and we're voting on both of those together. Unless we want to separate it out, given the reservations that people have. Yes, in fact, I think it might be better to separate the two out, and we'll vote on both separately, I think. So this will be a recorded vote for both. So let's take D1 first of all. It's been proposed, it's been seconded, we've had a debate on it. All those in favour, and just wait for the Democratic Service Manager to read out, because it's a recorded vote.
Councillor Austin.
For the recommendations in D1.
Councillor Bentley.
Here are the replies against.
Councillor Blundell. Councillor Bold. For. Councillor Burrell. Against. Councillor Carter. Against. Councillor Clare. For. Councillor S. Davis. For. Councillor Dugmore. Against. Councillor Eade. Against. Councillor England.
For.
Councillor N. England. Both for. Councillor V. Fletcher. Against. Councillor Green. For. Councillor Guy. For. Councillor Hope. Against. Councillor Hoskin. Against. Councillor Iron.
For.
For. Councillor Jawar. For. Councillor Kiernan. Against. Councillor Lawrence. Against. Councillor Mackenzie. For. Councillor Mason is absent. Councillor A. McClements. For. Councillor Meredith. Against. Councillor Minor. For. Councillor Mollett. Against. Councillor Murray. Councillor Murray?
Is that the lead?
Not here. Councillor Overton.
For.
For. Councillor Pickin.
For.
For. Councillor Pinter. For. Councillor G. Reynolds. For. Councillor S. Reynolds. For. Councillor Rhodes. For. Councillor Sahota. For. Councillor Scammell. Against. Councillor Sloan. For. Councillor C. Smith. For. Councillor Thompson. For. Councillor K. Tomlinson. For. Councillor W. Tomlinson. For. Councillor Turley. For. Councillor Watling. For. Councillor White. For. That's carried.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis, can I just check with you? We separated out D1, D2. We've had a recorded vote with D1. Are you suggesting you would like a recorded vote for D2, or are you happy to put that to the vote?
Yes.
Which one? Recorded vote? Yeah. Okay. So this is D2. Recommend that the new allocations and slippage detailed in the report, along with the funding changes to the capital programme, be approved.
Councillor Austin.
For.
Councillor Bentley. Against. Councillor Blundell. For. Councillor Bold. For. Councillor Burrell. Against. Councillor Carter. Against. Councillor Clare. For. Councillor S. Davis. For. Councillor Dugmore. Against. Councillor Eade. Against. Councillor A. England. For. Councillor N. England. For. Councillor Fletcher. Against. Councillor Green. For. Councillor Guy. For. Councillor Hope. Against. Councillor Hoskin. Against. Councillor Iron.
For.
For. Councillor Jawar. For. Councillor Kiernan. Against. Councillor Lawrence. Against. Councillor Mackenzie. For. Councillor McClements. For. Councillor Meredith. Against. Councillor Minor. For. Councillor Mollett. Against. Councillor Murray. Absent. Councillor Overton. For. Councillor Pickin. For. Councillor Pinter. For. Councillor G. Reynolds. For. Councillor S. Reynolds. For. Councillor Rhodes. For. Councillor Sahota. For. Councillor Scammell. Against. Councillor Sloan. For. Councillor C. Smith. For. Councillor Thompson. For. Councillor K. Tomlinson. For. Councillor W. Tomlinson. For. Councillor Turley. For. Councillor Watling. For. Councillor White. Councillor White. For. That's carried as well.
Right, members, thank you. We move to Appendix D3, Youth Justice Plan. I believe this is being proposed by Councillor Paul Watling.
The Youth Justice Plan is prepared on an annual basis for Telford and Wrekin, Herefordshire, Shropshire and Worcestershire County Councils. The Youth Justice Plan sets out how youth justice services across West Mercia are structured, funded and identifies key actions to address the identified risks to service delivery and improvement. And this Youth Justice Plan will focus on collaborative multi-agency effort to work to improve outcomes for young offenders by offering an exemplary service with timely interventions and strong links and partnership across local services, including children's services, criminal justice and community safety sectors, to set out strategic direction for the youth offending service across West Mercia and agree and review local youth justice planning, to provide support and challenge the West Mercia YUS on operational performance. around first-time entrance to the youth justice system, the use of custody and reoffending. I move the recommendation that the youth justice plan is recommended to full council for approval and endorsement, and that the West Mercia YOS responsibilities are noted.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder, please? Yeah. Councillor Overton. Do any members wish to comment, make any observations about it? No? You're happy that we move the recommendations? All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That's moved. Thank you very much and carried. We move to Appendix D4, the Marches Local Enterprise Partnership Update, and I believe this is being proposed by Councillor Sahota.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the local enterprise Marches, and this is the report where we got a £10 million and we got some more promised next year as well. And also, I'd like to draw your attention to recommendation of 2.4. Of course, you know, we are still talking and negotiating with the government with regards to HCA land receipt and the sharing agreement. Let's hope. Of course, the government's not going to let us have all 100% of the receipts, but we are hoping that we will get a large chunk of it, and well, that hasn't been decided. But we will be sort of talking and negotiating with the government and the LAP. And I move the report.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Watling. Thank you. Any members wish to comment, make any observations about this? Councillor Dugmore, followed by Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On page 99, on the bottom of the second paragraph, it says that there's £1.3 million to relocate the bus station in Telford Town Centre. What I would like to know is, has that decision been taken? Because I thought there was it hadn't been finalised as to what was happening with the bus station. If it's going to remain where it is, what's going to happen with the 1.3 million? And what's the position of the bus users group? Perhaps the chairman would like to comment.
Right, just before I introduce Councillor Carter, can I just remind members, unless there is a good reason not to, could you stand when you're making your comments or asking your questions, please? Okay. Councillor Carter.
It's up there.
Mine's on a similar theme, Mr. Speaker. Whilst I generally welcome the report and hope that the LEP is successful in the future, this particular item on the bus station, due to my elderly years these days, I do occasionally now allow myself and my wife to go on one of these coach tours, GB tours to be honest, and I'm not trying to do that, I'm not being paid for them to say that. But they do have very, very good services from Telford bus station. Problem is that anybody joining that bus now can't actually get dropped off there. And particularly when you get a lot of, I'm not in that position, I'm quite healthy, but a lot of people who go on these tours are infirm, some in wheelchairs, but a lot with sticks, and they're finding it very, very difficult to negotiate coming from the other side of Telford to get round to get to the bus station. Also, taxis are not able to drop people or pick people up anymore outside that bus station, and I find that unacceptable. And I'm sure that it will get worse before it gets better. I'm just wondering whether this has been taken into account and whether anything can be done in the interim period to try and alleviate this, particularly people who are finding it difficult to get around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or observations before I pass back to Councillor Sahota? No. Leader.
Okay, I'll try to be as brief as possible. Councillor Dugmore's the bus station. Of course, we got the money for £1.3 million from the LAPS, and but yes, we haven't got actual plans because that's still out there for a consultation. And when that is done, that will be brought to the full council meeting. And Councillor Carter, that's a long-standing problem. Again, you know. My ward is next door and the people are always complaining about having to walk and this way. That will be sorted as well. This is a question of the money's there before the plans, and we're working on it.
Right, thank you very much. So it has been moved, it's been seconded. We've had some debate. We now need to put this to a vote. All those in favour of recommendation on the appendix of D4? Any against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. We move to item 9, which is the annual scrutiny report and the first ever annual scrutiny awards, but we're going to have Councillor White who's going to speak to the annual report. Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, I was just sitting there thinking about what is the difference between scrutiny and what we do here. Tonight, we've seen a typical example of how a council destroys itself. We've got a large population there, a large number of people who have came to see how this council works. And we see people voting against for no reason, we insults, we have all these things that go in the normal council, what I call the circus of a full council meeting, that destroys the real good work that has been put in by both cabinet members and everyone else. Scrutiny has been recognised as a national award. We have been the only council that got 2 shortlisted areas. And it wasn't, our problem wasn't actually what we would put forward. It's what we didn't put forward. We could have put forward 10 areas where I'm sure we would have actually been recognised. I would challenge the members of the public to actually come and see how scrutiny works. You don't see politics, you don't see us fighting, you don't see us arguing, you see us trying to find the best ways forward. And that's why scrutiny in Telford works, and has worked for some time. This year has been so successful. We've been so fortunate to get the chairs that we've got, but also the members. And they have put a lot of heart and soul into the things we've done. On the national scene, as you know, that I also chair the regional one, we're trying to connect scrutiny work, the work that you and everybody else does here, actually to make sure that that goes to the right place, to the select committees, so as they can listen to not the political message, but to the real message of the people, because that's what scrutiny is about, trying to get the message of the people back to try and make sure it influences what we do in this council. And just recently, we actually had Mark Rogers, who is the chairman of the chief executive of Solace and also chief executive of Birmingham. And we were asking him, what can we do to try and make the challenge? And he's offered us 4 areas. And we will try and incorporate some of those areas to make sure that we are challenging yourselves, that you're challenging the cabinet members, that we're trying to make sure that we get a united voice, because what we face as a council in scrutiny and what we face here is something that has been faced throughout all of this country. The challenges that have been put before us, perhaps by sharing that information, by making sure that the spread of that, and by actually just talking to others, seeing how they've got around the problems. Perhaps maybe we'll start being able to share good practice, and that's what good scrutiny is about. Chairman, as you know that we have now got the Good Scrutiny Awards, and I'd like you to please announce the results of that.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Just for benefits of those who are not too clear on it, scrutiny is part of the governance of the council. We know how important governance is in all sorts of areas. You don't need to look at what has happened recently with organisations like News International to know that when governance goes wrong, it goes very wrong indeed. And I think many of you have been following what has been happening in other parts of the country and other local authorities where if you don't get that governance right and you don't hold people to account, then it can come back and it can bite you in a very, very difficult way. So we are extremely lucky. Many members here will deal with senior officers on a regular basis. They'll deal with assistant directors and heads of service. But they always, in my experience, heap praise on the colleagues who support the scrutiny process. And the work that they do, this is also a recognition of that. So as Councillor White said, we are fortunate in the past few years that we have had some of our scrutiny reports go to a national competition, 2 years running, and shortlisted from a shortlist of entries of about 40 down to about 10, and we have been noted for the quality of the work. And what we wanted to do is to recognise that more locally. So elected members and co-opted members have been voting in the past few days, and the Deputy Mayor will announce who has won.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Speaker. There are joint winners for the Telford and Wrekin 2014 Good Scrutiny Award. Number 1, the Budget and Finance Security Committee for the flexible way it has worked to scrutinise the council budget and work with other scrutiny committees to influence council's policy. Chair is Councillor Shirley Reynolds. The second one, the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee for scrutiny of the children in care placement strategy. Chair, Councillor Kevin Guy. You please come forward to receive the award.
Thank you.
Can I give you this one?
Right, unless Councillor Guy or Councillor Reynolds want to say anything, and I just say to you it's 7:45, got lots of things to get through, but if you'd like to say anything. Okay, right.
I'd very briefly like to thank all the members that are on the scrutiny board for children and young people. There are a lot of people outside bodies that have already been mentioned, head teachers, governors of schools, etc. And Councillor Mike Iron was the chair through the majority of this report, and a lot of praise should be heaped on him. So congratulations to Councillor Iron and all the external members of the board. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Item 10, resolved minutes for noting. Appendix F, G, H, I, J, K 1 to 3, L and M. And I take it they're all duly noted. Good. Item 11, questions. 4 questions. Just remember that these proceedings are being filmed and recorded, so we will ask that whoever's putting the question, and I think Councillor Burrell is going first, reads the question out so that those who are following proceedings can hear what is put. Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Chair. Noting the tragic case of abuse in Rotherham, could the Cabinet Member for Children's Services provide this Council and the wider community with a reassurance that no similar circumstances exist in the borough?
Thank you. Councillor Watley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Child sexual exploitation is a heinous crime perpetrated by adults, mainly men, on children, and one that this Council and our partners take extremely seriously. The Council has been aware and actively working to reduce the risk of CSE to children and young people for a number of years. During this period, there has been a significant police operation, Operation Chalice, which, with the support of the Council and other partners, has resulted in 7 men being jailed for a total of more than 49 years after a series of court cases. Councillor Burrell, I'm sure you're aware of the complex nature of the local investigation, as you were lead member between 2007 and 2011. I can speak from my involvement since 2011. CSE is an extremely complex type of sexual abuse, which typically means that young people are initially groomed to think the perpetrator is their boyfriend. This means that when professionals raise their concerns with young people, they say that there's nothing to be concerned about. Also, if young people tell professionals about other young people who they would suggest were being abused by older men, it is sometimes denied by the victims if the matter is reported to social care and the police. The Council has been and continues to be proactive in developing and maintaining a multi-agency and partnership response to tackling and supporting children, young people and their families who are at risk from CSE. The role of youth workers in patiently building relationships with vulnerable young people has been critical to ensuring disclosures and support for families. A second feature of this abuse often tends to be the manipulation through drugs, alcohol, and threats of actual violence to victims and their families to ensure ongoing compliance. The practice that we have developed reflects the national guidance and recommendations that have since been published. This gives us reassurance that our service development is sound. Ofsted inspectors have also scrutinised our service development and practice in this area and have been very positive in their views. Much learning has taken place over many years that has enabled the Council to put in place a CSE strategy that involves a multi-agency pathway and a model of working that is effective in working with young people at risk from CSE. Young people and their parents are engaging with this way of working, which is key to being able to effectively safeguard these very vulnerable children and young people. We review our arrangements and development plans regularly. Our pathway involves a robust risk management arrangement and operational and strategic partnership groups and activity and performance that are reported to the local Safeguarding Children's Board. Periodic audits are completed with the Council to check the quality of the work being done, and the local Safeguarding Children's Board has commissioned an independent audit for October 2014.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burrell, is there any supplementary question? Okay.
More overqualified than a question, really, Chair, but I'd like to thank Councillor Watling for his response to what was a difficult question, but one that I trust members will appreciate had to be asked in order to provide reassurance to the wider community. My experience of this council is of an organisation which is utterly committed to the protection of young people from abuse in any form, working hand in hand with the police, the local independent Children's Safeguarding Board and other partners to ensure that whatever can be done to ensure the safety of young people in the borough is being done. And I'm sure that that experience is shared by all members present. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member once more for his quite detailed response.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think you have a second question, isn't it? Okay, question 2.
Thank you, Chair. Could the Cabinet Member for Children's Services provide us with a number of primary school places required in the borough to satisfy demand caused by speculative development and targets set by Shaping Places, and explain how he will fund them?
Councillor Watling.
Thank you. The Shaping Places document is a consultation document, as you know. Therefore, it's not known at this stage which of these sites will be developed in the future. Therefore, it would seem counterproductive to make speculative estimates of pupil numbers. The school organisation team have taken part in a borough-wide consultation process for Shaping Places and have provided figures to the planning teams on which proposed development sites could be accommodated without any need for additional school places and which would be likely to need the expansion of school provision. Where any expansion of school places is deemed to be necessary, the Council will seek to negotiate contributions from developers. As we've heard earlier this evening, a large amount of money from 106 has been raised to work with the school in Ketley. These will vary depending on the size and location of the developments and could range from requesting the land and the cost to provide a school if the site is very isolated. For example, at the proposed development at Olscott, where we are asking for a school, to asking for a contribution in order to provide an additional classroom or an extension.
Thank you. Councillor Burrell, anything you want to ask? No? Yes? Okay.
Thank you. This administration has made clear its intention that 20,000 new homes be built within the borough of Telford Wrekin over the coming 20 years, creating demand for an additional 3,200 secondary school places, while at the same time slashing hundreds of secondary places and closing one secondary school altogether. How does the Cabinet member propose to create the thousands of secondary school places required in the coming years to avert a looming crisis in secondary education provision across the borough?
Okay, just before you respond, Councillor, can I also just make the point that the question put was about primary school places, and that your supplementary really should arise directly out of the original question or the reply. But given the context, let's hear the reply.
Okay. Councillor Burrell, you amaze me with your question. You sat through a call-in on our secondary school plans where you saw the detailed responses to that, knowing that we have enough places. Your scaremongering is wrong, and you should not be doing it, and you should be ashamed as an opposition that you are sitting there saying. You've got a scrutiny report in front of you that we've just agreed that says that primary places are the demand for growing pupil numbers across the borough for the next 5 to 10 years. Overall, there would be enough places to do it. That's what it's saying. It's very clear from the scrutiny reports that we've just agreed. Maybe if you spent more time in scrutiny, Councillor Burrell, I know you were a member of the scrutiny committee when they had this report. I don't know what your attendance was like, but maybe your constituents would like to have a look at that. But I can say that I know that the officers who work on these figures are very clear. You say we've closed the school. I say we've opened more schools in this town than you were going to open with your plans for secondary schools. You were going to leave secondary schools in a place where they would die. More than one secondary school in this town would have died. That isn't going to happen. We're building 2 secondary schools in Wellington. We're building a new secondary school in Priorslee. There is going to be enough places for children and young people across the borough, and you can shake your head, Councillor Burrell, but be very, very clear. Building Lakeside, building Priorslee, you're against all those, and your members regularly vote against these school building programmes in Plans Committee, and I think that's amazing that you would put politics before the future of the children and young people in this town, making political points about building schools. I can't believe it. What I would say to you is, I know there's enough places coming up in Telford and Wrekin. Scrutiny are telling us that as well. You'll be surprised. Of course, the planning of schools places has not been helped by your government, and ministers Mr Gove and now Miss Morgan's tampering centrally with school policies. The fact that much needed budgets are being diverted to free schools that are being built not where the need is, across the country this is, not where the need is, but where certain people want them. This doesn't help the local authority to plan their future schools place strategy. I would encourage the councillor to put his head above the parapet, lobby with me for a less centralised system.
Thank you. We move to question 3, which is being put by Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Just wait for the microphone.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Cabinet Member for Employment and Skills update the Council on efforts to reduce youth unemployment in our borough?
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. We've made good progress in the borough since making youth unemployment a key area of focus and setting aside £1.4 million to tackle the problem. But there remains challenges. In January 2014, youth unemployment stood at a shocking 32.1% in this borough, well above the regional average of 24.6% and the national average of 20.8%. Youth unemployment has since fallen to 26%, and although this is still above the regional average of 22.3%, the national average of 20%, we're making real progress. In respect to those not in education, training or skills NEET, we have around 444 young people in this category. We're doing everything we can, both as a council and as a partnership in the public, private and voluntary sector to reduce this scar on our town. Following the massive success of the jobs fair earlier on, I can confirm that there will be a second and bigger 2-day job and skills fair on the 18th and 19th of March next year, together with the Christmas mini job fair, which will be held tomorrow and Saturday at Telford Town Centre. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to bring down the numbers of our young people out of work and not in education. I must say to employers inside Telford and outside Telford, invest in Telford, invest in our people, and invest in our young people.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Gillies, is there anything that you want to ask as a supplementary? But can I just remind you as well, it's got to arise directly out of the original question or the reply that you heard.
Thank you. It's really good news. What conversations has the Cabinet member had with ministers in government about match funding the resources the council has put in to tackle youth unemployment?
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I don't think this is a party political point, Mr. Speaker, but I have written to the Minister for Employment, Esther McVeigh, numerous times asking to meet her, and she refuses to meet me as the Cabinet Member for Employment and Skills, putting young people in this borough first. She refuses to meet the leader of this council, and I will be putting forward a motion at the next full council demanding that this council joins together, demanding a meeting with the Minister for Employment, because what we need to do is unite as a council to demand that the government match funds the £1.4 million that we've put aside as a council to help our young people. We know that when we target resources, we can bring down the number. We need help from central government, and I hope that in the next council meeting we can join together across party divisions and lobby this government for £1.4 million and the courtesy of the Minister for Employment to meet me and council officers.
Thank you. And final question, question 4, which is being put by Councillor Eade. Councillor Eade.
The question's to Charlie Smith, I believe, isn't it?
It is.
Can you confirm that, unlike the previous Labour administration, this council has no plans to build on the Town Parks Arena?
Councillor Smith.
No, he's got to give a better answer than that, comrades. Mr. Speaker, we have no plans to build on the arena in the town park. There never were any plans to build on the arena. And Andrew well knows that the 400-acre park in the heart of the town is a major asset for the town, which attracts people to the park and the town centre. It's such a major asset that we made this administration made the arena a successful venue for leisure events, and that continues to be there. And in case Andrew had forgotten, I have to remind him and council who've forgotten that the arena was awarded Fields in Trust status in November 2011, which protects the arena as a public open space and playing field and recreation ground. Then, to answer the question, simply, there are no plans to build on the arena in the town park.
Thank you. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Reid, or would you like to say something else?
I have a supplementary question.
Of course, absolutely.
As ever, and would like to make some comments. What we've been told is actually factually incorrect, and I'll put it as politely as I can. There is another way of putting it. I personally saw the plans for apartments on the arena in the Chief Executive's office, Mr. Wellings at that time, and he made it very clear that any development of, in his view, of Southwater could not go ahead unless part of the arena was actually built on. I saw those plans, so those plans existed. And what you've said, Councillor, is materially incorrect and it's untrue. And I'll leave it at that point. But you're right, we did put Fields in Trust in place for exactly that reason, to actually stop anybody else from building on it, although there may be ways of circumventing that. So I'm reassured by what you've said this time, Councillor Smith. And bearing in mind, of course, that the arena is such an attraction to Town Park, it's a valuable resource. I wonder if he or one of his colleagues could tell us what about the financial performance this time of T-Live and confirm and tell us that it has indeed made a profit, particularly at a time
Yeah, Councillor Eade has every right to be heard by everybody who's present. So those, please, who are just allow him to make his point. Thank you.
At a time, of course, when we're cutting £10.5 million from the adult social care budget, I would be very grateful to hear that this event made a profit. If it didn't, perhaps you could give us the details of the amount of financial loss that was incurred.
Okay. So, Councillor Davis, are you responding to this?
Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, I think the supplementary doesn't directly link to the supplementary question, but I will respect.
Councillor, are you happy for Councillor Davis to respond on your behalf? Is that all right? Because what we don't want is have two people responding.
We'll make the point that Councillor Eade made a supplementary point about T-line, which has nothing to do with building on the arena.
Yes, and I have to say to you, I accept that. So are you going to respond to T-Live? Is that what you're going to respond to? No, I don't. It is absolutely inappropriate. No, right. Councillor Smith, if you respond to the substance of the original question and anything that has arisen out of that original question, and if you'd use the microphone as well, please.
Mr. Speaker, what I said in my original reply was totally relevant and the truth as I knew it, and there were no plans to build on the arena. There are no plans now to build on the arena, and this administration, I believe we're in power in 2011 in November, when we made it feels in, so it feels in trust part. I do wish, in fact, that Councillor Eade would stop trying to add on to things. The T-Live one is a totally separate question and irrelevant to his first question and to my answer.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's move on. Notice of motion, which is item 12. Councillor Richard Overton to move. Councillor Overton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to move the following motion. This council notes with great concern proposals that would see an accident emergency centre for Telford, Shropshire, Mid Wales becoming ambulance only, with so-called walk-in patients diverted to an urgent care centre. Telford Wrekin Council again calls for full 24-hour accident emergency service at our Princess Royal Hospital and urges the Secretary of State to intervene in this process that is bringing so much uncertainty to our residents. This administration is concerned by the current debate being undertaken across the county in relation to the Future Fit programme. We acknowledge that there are issues in relation to accident emergency services and that there are increasing numbers of people accessing these services. The Trust is finding it hard to recruit consultants in this field, but we must ask ourselves, are the proposals being discussed good for our residents in Telford? I think it would be wrong to say that any proposals to move accident emergency services from Telford Princess Royal Hospital is good for Telford and Wrekin residents. That is why we are moving this resolution tonight. We want to see an end to the continuing debate over hospital services for our town. Telford's Princess Royal Hospital, including the A&E team, provides an excellent service. Telford is a growing town. Well, we are in fact the economic powerhouse of the county. We have more heavy industry, and our business-winning, business-supporting council ethos is encouraging more businesses to come to Telford. I had the pleasure of visiting the new Women and Children's Centre last weekend before it opens at the end of the month. It is an excellent facility and one we are rightly proud to have in our town. This shows a continuing need for specialist facilities in our town, and we shouldn't let the current Future Fit debate take anything away or downgrade services at Telford Hospital. Telford not only has a growing young family base, but we also have an ageing population with increasing care needs. The Princess Royal Hospital is accessible to all people, whereas we all know how long it can take to Shrewsbury or wherever the new emergency trauma unit proposal may be, although this will only be for blue light emergencies. As I said earlier, we appreciate that there are financial pressures on the NHS, but we don't feel that cuts to A&E are the answer. It's not what people want. If savings and costs are the difficulties of delivering good quality A&E services, how can a new site that will cost millions and millions of pounds be the answer? We have seen in the press local Telford MP David Wright standing up for Telford. And we as a local council must also do what we believe to be in the best interest of our residents. That is why we will not sit around whilst there are proposals to downgrade our hospital. We want to see full 24-hour, 7-day-a-week A&E services at Telford Princess Royal Hospital. This isn't scaremongering, it was reported in the Shropshire Star by some, and it's not a pillar fight between Telford and Shrewsbury. This is about putting a line in the sand. It's about making sure our residents' health and well-being are being best catered for. It's about making sure there is a local functioning, open for business, accident and emergency department. I am hoping today the councillors who are here representing Telford and Wrekin residents forget about party politics and stand up for our town. This administration's message is clear. We will not let Telford residents down. We should also, in our opinion, not be drawn into the debate that could create the loss of services in the interim by unaffordable plans for a new site. And as far as this administration is concerned, we will not be told what to say and we will not be keeping quiet on this issue. Our residents deserve more than that. They need to know that we are standing up for them and their families. They need to know that we will do all we can to keep 24-hour accident emergency at Telford Hospital, and that is why we want the Secretary of State to intervene. We don't want rhetoric coming from him that it's a decision for local health bosses who are well prepared to make local decisions. We want action because when our residents and our own families' health care is involved, that response will not be good enough. I move.
Thank you. Councillor Rob Sloan, I believe you're seconding the motion.
I'll do so now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the motion's been ably moved by Councillor Overton. I just wanted to pick out one or two points, and I hope we can reach a consensus across the chamber. We're not trying for a political dogfight on this, but I have to say that we were accused in February of scaremongering on this issue, and the Minister was in the town. I've got the Shropshire Star articles here, and this is what he told the Shropshire Star. We commit to A&E on both sites and there are no plans to change that. Well, there are plans to change that, aren't there? There are clear plans to change that, and I think we need to be very clear what those plans are. A blue light centre, one centre for 600,000 people across Mid Wales, Shrewsbury and Telford. A blue light. So you won't be able to go to take your child when it's ill. 12,000 children go to A&E in Telford alone in a year. But that won't be open. There'll be all these walk-in centres. I've had to break the habit of a lifetime and buy the Daily Mail. But it's a very good article. And it's reporting that these centres, these treatment centres, they'll be Skype to specialists. Well, that's no way to run a health service. It really isn't. And one thing I do predict, and I think the people examining these, and I know some people in the room tonight examining these proposals, I predict if there's one blue light centre, and if my child was ill and I couldn't take it to that centre, I would ring an ambulance so it did get to that centre. And 999 calls will skyrocket if these proposals go through. I think that we are a growing town, and I do hope that people in this chamber will also say a trust that is some £15 million in the red is talking about a new centre at Atcham. Well, that's just pie in the sky, really, isn't it? And it's not a debate we should get drawn into. I support wholeheartedly an A&E department open to all in Telford. I actually support that for Shrewsbury as well. I think the area, the rural areas, Mid Wales, there is space and need for two A&E units in this county, and I agree with Jeremy Hunt on that for the first time.
Thank you very much. Right, it's open to debate. Councillor Arnold England, followed by Councillor John Thompson.
Telford Development Corporation came into being over 40 years ago to create a new town. Those of us who've been around that long, we've lived the history of our hospital. The first demand was to retain Cosford. That was our local hospital. We lost that fight. We then set up the Telford Hospital Action Committee. It was cross-party, cross-trade union, cross-industry. Everybody made the case for a hospital for Telford. That was getting on for over 30 years ago. Ministers agreed, following deputations to Westminster, that we should have a hospital. So we got the PRH. All the historical arguments were good then, and they hold good now. They're as good as they were 30 years ago. We now also have a motorway, and obviously there's potential for further need for accident and emergency along that route. So why advocate a single site costing £500 million? There will be further growth. We've already heard tonight that the government have relaxed the planning laws, more housing development in the rural areas, so that's even further for people to travel if they had to go to Shrewsbury. Thousands more houses, we're told. We're told that the clinicians want only one emergency centre with additional urgent care centres. Well, I'm sorry, we're not here to service clinicians. They are here to service us and the people that we represent. The NHS executives have the job of managing resources. They're not doing very well. The hospitals are in debt, and that is, I think, part of the issue. So if they are not up to the job of protecting our accident and emergency services, then they should move aside so other people can manage the services. I'm expecting to meet Andy Burnham later this month at the Labour Party conference. As you know, he's the Shadow Health Secretary, and I will be asking him to bring CCGs under local authority control. That's when he's in office next May, of course, to ensure that health provision is administered by elected representatives. My final point is, and one or two on the opposition have been nodding, this is a fight for all the people of Telford, Tory, Liberal, Labour, trade unions, business people. I want us to work together, and I have actually already asked, and it's debatable, whether we can actually have some sort of referendum or poll to be held at the same time as the next election, which would add weight to our argument. That's debatable because it's political and we're in purdah and all that, so maybe we won't do that. But the point is, we have all got to speak with one voice, and that's my message tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor John Thompson.
Thank you. You first of all come across the NHS Future Fit. Well, you think that title is to go to some of our excellent leisure centres in Wellington and in the area. The title is completely incorrect. And also the venues and the times. The next one is at Newport, 1 to 5. How many people can get to Newport on a Friday afternoon at 1 to 5? Luckily, I'm taking time off next Friday to go along, because this is a very important issue. In the Telford and Wrekin area, we have worked and fought hard for that hospital. People with heart conditions and stroke victims go along to that hospital and fight hard, and the A&E work hard for the patients. We're very lucky to have our Telford MP, David Wright, a full-time MP who's working hard for a full-time A&E. I just hope the part-time MP for the Wrekin doesn't make it a part-time A&E. Thank you.
Councillor Liz Clare, followed by Councillor Sean Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's not a lot you can add, except let's not forget the sacrifices that Telford actually gave up in order to have our hospital. We lost all our community cottage hospitals. That was the sacrifice at the time. We've never got them back. And believe you me, if we lose this fight, we'll never get it back. And forget about talking about Atcham. If you live at Newport, Atcham's a very long way. If you live at Wellington, it's not very near either. Now, you might look on a map and say, as the crow flies, between the two, it's probably in the middle. But it might be in the middle, but it's not very convenient. And I think we will see in the next 12 or 18 months, and I hope that we'll stand shoulder to shoulder in the demonstrations to keep our A&E. We can't fight for jobs and say, sorry, if you have an accident, you've got to go 20 miles up the road to get seen to. It is not acceptable. And please let us be together on this and just remind us of what we lost in order to what we have gained, and we certainly do not want to lose it. And we're not going to lose it. if we all have to sit outside Downing Street and say it's not acceptable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Councillor Clare, thank you. Councillor Sean Davis, then we're going to draw the debate to a close and put it, the motion to a vote. Oh, Councillor McClements, I do apologise, and Councillor Reid. Didn't see them indicate before. So Councillor Davis, followed by Councillor McClements, followed by Councillor Reid, and then we'll draw the debate to a close.
Mr. Speaker, I also agree this is not a party political point, and we have to come together as local councillors, as local residents, parish and town councils, trade unions, business organisations, MPs, to come together and send one united message to this Secretary of State, Jeremy Hunt, who must intervene in this debate. The fact is that residents in Dawley and Manninsley, my ward, who send me here to talk on their behalf, are scared and concerned that the health bosses are talking yet again about taking away our 24-hour, 7 days a week A&E, and we must not allow it to happen, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that our growth agenda in terms of bringing companies to this town to employ people is dependent upon a full 24-hour, 7-day-a-week A&E. That our town is a growing town, as we know, and people expect us as councillors, loud and clear, each and every one of us in this chamber, to stand up and fight for Telford and Wrekin residents. Say no to the health bosses who want to sell us down the river. No to a one site, which in the reality is £500 million, £500 million. That money is not available, and we all know it. And the reality is, as Councillor Overton has quite rightly said, this is a distraction to try and get us to agree to one site, one central site, wherever that may be. And I must say, Action doesn't particularly serve the residents of Dawley and Manninsley particularly well either. So I'm not even sure whether that location is the right location. But even if that location was available, where is the money coming from? Where is the cash coming from this government? Jeremy Hunt has to intervene. Mark Pritchard has to do what he's paid to do. He's very vocal in Albania. It's about time he started being vocal in Wellington.
Thank you. Councillor McClements. Angela McClements. Great. Thank you very much. Do apologise. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Speaker. Our actions as a council over many years, and it does go back a long time, you're right, I remember it right from the early days, have been quite clear. The council has always been 100% behind the PRH and our hospital. That was the same in previous Labour administrations, it was the same in our administration as well. And we fought long and hard. It was a very bitter fight at that time over the same issues. And those fights, they continue year after year. You put them to bed one moment and they resurface again. And it is time, you're right. We made it very clear a few years ago, a couple of years ago, that this has to stop. That a town like Telford, a growing town, cannot manage without full A&E services. Now, I extracted an agreement that would be the position that the Health Authority would stand by. Now, quite clearly, that was never going to stand the test of time, and here we are, once again, after agreements have been made, back with the same issues. Now, I believe then, and I believe now, that the central location is a red herring, and I don't think the finances are there to do it, and in many ways it's irrelevant, it's a smokescreen. But we do need adequate A&E cover for all of Shropshire, and that includes Shrewsbury. I'll go along with Rob with that I would fight for A&E cover as for Shropshire as a whole. But a standby or standback position, certainly as regards Telford, is that we cannot lose our A&E service. Not a full A&E service, not some sort of drop-in centre. And whatever it takes, we will fight to keep that. Now, I'm mildly surprised at this coming along. That's always been the position in this council, and successive administrations could always depend on that, and they can depend on it now. We will fight and do whatever it takes to make sure that this town has a fully equipped and fully operational emergency and accident centre in the town.
Thank you very much. Right, the motion has been put, it's been seconded, we've had a very balanced and sensible debate, and we need to move to the vote. Sorry. You do, yes. Do you want to exercise that right to reply?
Well, if there's cross-party support, then no.
Do you,
supported it, then
Well, let's put that by moving to the vote, shall we? So the motion has been put, it's been seconded. Yes, thank you very much. Don't think there is a need for a recorded vote on this. Let's put it to the vote. So we recognise what was put at the beginning. All those in favour and supporting the motion? Any against? And that was unanimous. Members, thank you very much. Consensus and harmony is broken out. Will it continue? Right, we have a second motion, which is being put by Councillor Dugmore, and Councillor Dugmore just asked that you'd read out in full for those who are following proceedings in different places. Thank you.
Will do, Mr. Speaker. This council notes the success of Shropshire Council in identifying 5.47 years of future housing land supply, which will help them resist speculative development that is currently blighting the borough of Telford and Wrekin. This council also notes with concern that despite 3 years in control, the current Labour administration have failed to identify a similar land supply, and calls on the council leader to explain to the community the reasons for this abject failure to protect the borough from out-of-control building development. So, Mr. Speaker, I, like many residents of the borough, am appalled at the laissez-faire attitude of this administration regarding their failure to protect the borough from the relentless loss of our precious green spaces to development. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Shropshire and many other councils for identifying their 5-year housing land supply. Like the Conservative opposition in this chamber, they were concerned that without it they would be at the mercy of the developers, and so it came to pass. Here in Telford and Wrekin, under this administration, little or no work has been done. Indeed, we went from having a 5-year supply to a 2.5-year supply almost overnight. Mr. Speaker, it would be laughable if it were not so serious, and it beggars belief that we have less than 5 years of housing land supply. When established, we were a new town. We're surrounded by vast swathes of land, many of which still have boards up stating land for future development. We have large areas of sites ripe for development. Using the council's own figures, I calculated more than 5 years land supply. And if all the previously developed land or brownfield sites we use, we'd have enough for the next 30 years. So why is it so important? The National Planning Policy Framework, or the beloved NPPF, says that local authorities must demonstrate they have a 5-year land supply, or else planning permission should be granted unless adverse impacts outweigh the benefits. Now, the more houses an authority builds, the more money it receives from the new homes bonus, £6,000 per dwelling plus 6 years council tax. In a nutshell, this administration has failed in its duty so as to generate as much money as possible. It has also failed to produce a local plan which will ensure development will only take place in approved locations. This is despite having 2 years to prepare and 1 year since the NPPF came into existence. They've had 3 years. Both the local plan and 5-year land supply give local authorities the power to control where development takes place, not leaving the borough at the mercy of speculative developers. We all accept that the borough needs to expand and evolve. We all accept that new homes are needed, but this should be controlled by us, the elected representatives. Quite frankly, this administration needs to get a grip of the situation before any more land is lost. There is hardly a part of the borough that isn't affected by this, and many of us are well aware of the significant level of public anger over what is happening. This administration has failed to put in place the checks and balances that are in the NPPF to ensure that development is controlled by local authorities. I asked the leader of the council to explain why his administration has failed to act, leaving all these areas of undeveloped land in the borough at risk of development. As an opposition party, it's our duty to highlight this failure, and we, like many residents, demand answers. I urge you to support the motion.
Councillor Dugmore, thank you. Councillor Eade, I think you are seconding this, but do you want to speak now or reserve your right to speak later? Thank you very much indeed. Right, any members? Councillor Sahota, followed by Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It might take me a couple of minutes or a bit more over there, so I hope you allow me that. I am aware that the Shropshire recently published their 5 years housing land supply, and I'm also aware that it has taken them 5 years to do that. And we started ours in 2012, and it should be completed by next year. If we apply the same methodology and calculation as Shropshire, on the basis that we would have on that basis we would have 5.5 years of housing land supply if we apply that methodology. However, it's important to stress that Shropshire's calculation approach has not been tested at public examination or at any planning appeals. And this is an important point to remember. It has not been tested. On your Councillor Dugmore's speculative development points, I would like to remind you that the majority of the development in Telford is on the land planned and prepared and adopted by the previous Conservative administration in 2007. And I got a document to that effect. Councillor Dugmore can see that. This is all that was prepared. That administration accepted 26,000 homes in that document. And the document is in there. Whereas our Shaping Places document, we are proposing 20,000, 6,000 less. Furthermore, no residential planning application in Telford and Wrekin has been called in by the Secretary of State, which further shows that our approach, our planning policy, is in line with the government national planning policy. Councillor Eade and Councillor Dugmore talks a lot these days about taking on the government and defining their planning policy, but when they were in charge, they just rolled over and accepted whatever the government said. When Councillor Dugmore was the chair of the Plans Board, he only turned down 2 or 3 or 4 applications in all that time. But since his party lost the election, he voted against more than 70% of the major applications on the Plans Board. Councillor Dugmore is good at playing politics with planning issues. Keeping that in mind, Mr. Speaker, I hope you will allow me to finish this. I would like formally to invite 2 opposition leaders, Councillor Eade and Councillor Tomlinson, and 2 of our local MPs to come along with me to see Secretary of State Eric Pickles, so we can make it clear to him that whilst we accept the growth, we need growth that is planned and not as required under the government's national planning guideline. So that's at the moment, as we all know, if our Plans Board refuses an application which is in keeping with the government guideline, then subsequently the government inspector can turn that over and our council ends up paying hundreds of thousands of pounds in cost, money which we can ill afford with all the government cuts. All we ask of the government is that we decide where we build our houses on our terms, and just like the council has said, on not the developers' terms. This current system works against us. Andrew, will you join me in this meeting? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charles Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the leader has said is pertinent to the point and answers the motion. The MPPF guidance altered the way the 5-year land supply can be calculated, and it altered almost overnight, which put this council at a disadvantage, as it put every other council in the land at a disadvantage, because it took into account past planning permissions which had not yet been started, and therefore we have 12,000 starts permitted in this borough, but they haven't yet been given the start by the developers, and that's the problem. And they are all in accordance with the core strategy that we have in place until 2016, which was put in place by the previous administration to this one. And that is the point. We didn't alter it, the government altered the way it's calculated. Now, I'm aware that Shropshire have recently altered their methodology of calculated 5-year supply of land, but it's not been tested by the planning inspector. The planning inspectors need to have a look at this, and an examination in public is required for it to go through. Now, it's not been tested by appeal, by turning down something and tested by appeal. And that's the point we need to get to. This council is actually working towards a proper shaping places. We've taken 3 years, and as previously said, Shropshire have been at it since 2009. I think my arithmetic suggests that's 5 years, and that's what Colgip said. 5 years. Not bad. When we applied their methodology, applied in Shropshire, we actually got to 5.5 years supply of housing land, and we have a higher target figure than Shropshire, and therefore we have to get it tested properly. And we will, in fact, be taking council's opinion very shortly as to whether we would get away with it and what we're doing, because our shaping places will be in place by 2016. Now, I would ask, in fact, that the opposition join the leader in going to the minister, because we've written, and the answer was well, it was a non-plus answer, really. Didn't say anything. But in the meantime, they should withdraw this misleading, and it is misleading to the public, motion. I ask them to withdraw it now. They can do. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Veronica Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Telford and Wrekin core strategy was approved in 2006. The housing figures imposed by Labour government in June 2004. 10 years out of date. The latest Housing Needs Survey 2014, which is this document, it set requirements at 10,651 houses. That is 532 per year. Telford and Wrekin need to revise the core strategy, CS1, and revise the housing targets based on this new information. I believe that if Telford and Wrekin do this, it will show that we have an achievable 5-year housing availability. So we can resist the current greenfield site applications and concentrate on brownfield site. And this will satisfy the NPPF for the 5-year supply. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. We've got a number of members who wish to speak. So we've got the following: Councillor Lawrence, followed by Councillor Bentley, followed by Councillor Carter, followed by Councillor McClements. Councillor Adrian Lawrence.
Thank you, Speaker. I support this motion, and it's really simple why. We just need control over our own destiny. I'm not happy with what the government's done with the MPPF, but we've got to live with it. And it's no good saying nothing's been tested. We've got to blame the government for it. We need control ourselves. If we've got proper control, then the Plans Board can make decisions about what development goes ahead and what doesn't. The situation we have now is just a free-for-all, and your administration is failing residents by not moving quickly enough to get a proper declaration of a 5-year supply. If you can do that, we can have proper control. We don't have that, and that's what this motion's about. I support it.
Thank you. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a point of clarity, Charlie, you started in 2011, not 2012. With regards to a previous question in the House earlier tonight on regards city status, that's named in the Shaping Places documents. Clearly says in the opening gambit, a city for the future. And your report. Pardon?
Can we not engage in a discussion across? Just direct your comments to me, and can we keep it to the substantive motion that's in front of us, please? Councillor Bentley.
Right, on the housing supply, the 5-year supply, if we split the borough of Telford and Wrekin up, as I think it could be, between Telford and the Wrekin side of it, the rural side, can easily demonstrate 5 and more years housing supply there. So a question I would ask is, why do we consistently see housing supply being forced upon the rural areas? Following that, there are brownfield sites that are not even in for consideration. And in a recent public meeting, when a question was thrown at a planning officer with regards to a brownfield site, the reply was, the site's too flat. Never heard it in my life. 9 times out of 10, I think a developer would welcome a flat site. Think of the savings he'd make. No regrading, no nothing. Brilliant. You get over 1,000 homes on that site, but it's too flat. So it's discounted. So what do we want to do? We want to build on undulating ground. Soon we'll have done that. Built on all the undulating ground. The only piece that's left to build on is the Wrekin. You know, it has to be that way, doesn't it? Because flat ground isn't suitable. Charlie Smith has consistently blamed the NPPF. There are guidance in the NPPF, there's guidance in the Localism Act. It also offers protection for agricultural land and for greenfield sites, yet we consistently disregard them. It is about time, yes, not waiting for other authorities to be tested. Let's be brave ourselves. Let's test it ourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
What I will try not to do, Mr. Speaker, is to go over ground that's been covered very well by colleagues. Would you let me speak, please? I stood before Plans Board on a number of occasions, particularly one I remember on the Maynards Croft development in Newport, which I represented. And I proved, and I think people who were in that room will agree with me, that the NPPF regulations supported why that should have been turned down. I pointed out in detail why there were reasons with the NPPF policies that that could have been turned down. Now, it's all about interpretation. One officer will interpret it one way, a councillor may interpret another. I believe that the NPPF can be used to refuse certain applications if council are minded to recommend it. The difficulty is they're not, and the Plans Board are recommended to pass it. I remember listening at a recent planning hearing, Councillor Guy basically talking about a planning application, really didn't want to talk about it. He just said, it's a Tory policy, it's your fault, we're going to pass it. Well, it isn't the Tory fault that you didn't have a 5-year plan. And could I ask one question that's never been answered? How is it that we had, I think it was a 13-year supply, and then overnight there was a planning application for a small development in the rural area, I can't remember the specific one, and at the end of it, it said, we cannot stop this application because we haven't got a 5-year supply. No announcement was made by the council. There was nothing given to the newspapers, nothing given to the councillors as to why we didn't have a 5-year supply. It wasn't held up and said why not. It was hidden in the bottom of a document. Surely something as important as that needed to be spelled out. And so, whilst there are faults in the NPPF, and I must say this to you, I had it on good authority that if there's a Labour administration next year, which God forbid, but if there is, they have said they're not going to scrap it, they're going to continue with it and give more housing, not less. So if you think this is bad, wait till you get a Labour administration, see what that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Angela McClements.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm really pleased that the leader, Councillor Kuldip-Sahota, has asked the opposition leaders to meet Eric Pickles. I think that's really important. We're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. We do want control over our destiny. We believe that as too. But under government planning policy, we can't do that. And as Councillor Carter points out, there are faults in the NPPF. And if he's saying that, a Tory, well, there definitely is faults. And I'll just refer, because, you know, just over the border in Shifnal, you know, there's real problems there. If we're talking about growth in our town, Shifnal's really come under the hammer. And it's the Stuart West, who's the Conservative councillor for Shifnal on Shropshire Council. said recently in the Shropshire Star, and I'll quote this, and I'd like the members of the opposition to listen, in quotes, "We still have this problem of the 5-year land supply, and these developments are being put on towns across the country, not just Shifnal. I think it is an appalling thing for this government to be doing this, and this will be their legacy. It is about time one of us stood up to government, let it go to appeal, and show just how horrific the amount of development is. This is a disgraceful way to perform planning." Now that is a Conservative councillor attacking his own government's policy on planning. And I have to say, I think there's been a few tweets from Councillor Barry May, deleted them of course. He's leader of Shropshire Council, saying the same thing. So I very much welcome, and I hope Councillor Reid will take the visit up with the leader, and that we can all go down to London together and be singing from the same hymn sheet, that we want control over our own destiny, and we want to ensure that we can choose where that growth happens, and that it is growth through good planning. Thank you.
Councillor McClements, thank you. Members, unless there is anybody else who indicates now that they wish to speak, I'm going to ask Councillor Reid to exercise his right to speak, having seconded the motion, and then I'll ask Councillor Dugmore to sum up. Nobody else. Councillor Reid.
Yes, thank you, Speaker. There seems to be some confusion between the leader of the council and Councillor Smith as to when Shaping Places is going to come online. The leader said it was 2015. Now, my understanding is actually going to be the end of 2016, not 2015. So if we've got a disagreement on something as fundamental as that, I do question what on earth is going on with the administration over planning at the moment. And you're right about the core strategy. It was put in place by us, and if we had a plan in place, we could defend it and implement that. As for visiting Eric Pickles, who I understood was your friend, you've spoken about him in glowing terms in the past. The message you will get there is quite simple and quite concise, and he will tell you to get a plan adopted the same way that the majority of authorities in this country have. That would give us the opportunity to start resisting some of the speculative planning applications that are coming in. Although we still have within the MPPF, we could start to turn down some of these. And Stuart West is quite right in saying this, and we should start challenging some of the applications, certainly on sustainability, and dare I say school places as well, which is something that came up earlier on. As for Shaping Places reducing the amount down to 20,000, well, on paper, yes, that's very true. It takes no account whatsoever of the speculative development that is going on from one end of this borough to the other that will more than make up the 6,000 houses that's taken out. So that's actually a bit of a misnomer. What I am prepared to help with and join in with, and have made this very clear, but you've never taken it up, not once, is to start and talk to government about HCA land. What we are asset rich with in this town is brownfield sites. And they are sites that were built with the infrastructure for development. And what we want in this town is appropriate development of the right type in the right places. And what we shouldn't be doing is what you're doing as a matter of policy, and it is a matter of policy, is that you're taking the pieces of silver by way of the new homes bonus, and you're selling this borough down the river. The development that's going on at the present time will be looked at in the future and wonder what on earth you've done. And it is down to this administration that that's happening. You've made no attempt whatsoever to resist development. Now, I've said time and time again, I've said it public, I've said it here, I've said on the radio, I don't support parts of the MPPF whatsoever. And we've made that very clear to Nick Bowles when he was in place as well. However, the answer you will get if you go and see that nice Mr. Pickles is get your plan adopted. You've sat on your chuffs for 3 years, and we're still talking about the end of 2016, maybe, whether we're actually going to get something adopted. That is not acceptable, and that is your responsibility.
Thank you. Councillor Dugmore, you've got a right to respond to what's been said in the debate.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, as expected, we got the blame game coming from the members opposite on the other side of the chamber. True to form, it's never their fault. Just a couple of points that came up in the debate. I mean, with Shropshire, Yes, when Stuart West made those comments, Shropshire hadn't calculated its 5-year land supply. It has now, and it did it, not somebody else. With regards to my record as chairman of Plans Board, it's perfectly public record that we used to refuse sometimes 3 or 4 applications at an evening. In fact, the officers have told me that they were never too sure whether or not they were going to get one through. No such danger now. Shaping places, yes, it's a pity that the member who's in charge of planning hasn't even made it to page 4 of Shaping Places, where it says that it will be adopted in 2016. And the other bit that he doesn't know is I have here a copy from the House of Commons Library dated the 16th of June 2014, and on page 3 of that, calculating housing land supply, and I quote, because I know that you like quotes, "The government does not want to lay down in detail the method of calculating housing need." So therefore, it's no good saying, oh, we've got to do it this way. No, you calculate it and then prove your facts. Now then, Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, it is this administration's failure to get a local plan in place, and that's why we haven't, and also we haven't got a 5-year land supply identified, both of which would ensure that we would have controlled development. Shropshire can do it, so can we if there was political leadership on this issue. It is very telling that the pages of the Shropshire Star, we see Shropshire Council refusing this development and refusing that development, yet in Telford and Wrekin, planning applications are as reported as likely to be approved. I mean, you wouldn't even get a betting taken up by some Chinese syndicate on this one. Well, Mr. Speaker, under this administration, there is little chance of any application being refused at Plans Board. Their average is little more than 1 a year, for fear of incurring appeal costs, unless, of course, it's a supermarket development where the sky seems to be the limit as far as costs go. Yes, the NPPF does favour sustainable development. However, local authorities can control this by having a local plan in place and show they have a 5-year land supply, both of which this administration has failed to do. If action is not taken, then the legacy of this Labour Council will be one of urban sprawl and repetition of the failed policies of the past, leading to the return of the concrete jungle, and that's what none of us want, I'm sure. Once an application has been granted, the land has been lost forever. I ask the leader of the council to account for these failings. Get a grip, man. Do your job. For many of us, a change of administration cannot come quick enough, as the controlling group seems incapable of doing what they're elected to do. I urge you to support the motion. And I'll have a recorded vote, please.
Recorded will take place. Right, thank you, members. We have had the motion put. It's been seconded. We've had a debate. Now put that to the vote. Recorded vote.
Councillor Austin.
Against.
Against. Councillor Bentley. For. Councillor Blundell. Against. Abstain, sorry. Abstention. Councillor Bold.
Against.
Against. Councillor Burrell. For. Councillor Carter. For. Councillor Clare.
Against.
Against. Councillor Davis.
Against.
Against. Councillor Dugmore. For. Councillor Eade. For. Councillor A. England.
Against.
Against. Councillor N. England.
Against.
Against. Councillor Fletcher. For. Councillor Green is, I think, absent. Councillor Guy.
Against.
Against. Councillor Hope. Absent. Councillor Hoskin. For. Councillor Iron.
Against.
Against. Councillor Jawar.
Against.
Against. Councillor Kiernan. For. Councillor Lawrence. For. Councillor Mackenzie.
Against.
Against. Councillor McClements.
Against.
Against. Councillor Meredith. For. Councillor Minor.
Against.
Against. Councillor Mollett. For. Councillor Overton.
Against.
Against. Councillor Pinter. Against. Councillor G. Reynolds. Against. Councillor S. Reynolds. Against. Councillor Rhodes. Against. Councillor Sahota.
Against.
Against. Councillor Scammell. For. Councillor Sloan.
Against.
Against. Councillor C. Smith.
Against.
Against. Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Against. Councillor Tomlinson. K. Tomlinson. Abstain. Councillor W. Tomlinson. Abstain. Councillor Turley?
Against.
Against. Councillor Watling?
Against.
And Councillor White? Against. The motion is defeated.
Motion is defeated. Right, members, that concludes the business for this evening. Thank you very much. Have a safe journey home. Thank you.